I thought I'd start this evening just with a short story. I was at Mass this morning with my family, and it was a children's Mass. And so, the priest asked all the little kids to kind of come and sit up in the front and on the floor. And this little girl, was speaking, and she just looked at the priest and she said, "My dad went to jail for a long, long time, and he just got out." And the priest, who he didn't know what to do with this comment. He didn't really hear her fully, and so he asked her to say it again louder. And then, of course, she did say it again, that her dad went to jail for a long, long time. And then he looked, and everyone was kind of laughing a little bit, because when you have kids, they just tell the truth. They just say things, about your parents. Like if I ever, holler at my little girl, she'll tell the next parent she sees that my dad hollered at me. And when you're a parent, you just know these things happen. It's like no one's a perfect parent. But the priest, he doesn't have kids, and so he had her say it louder because he couldn't hear her. And then he just made a little silly joke. He said, "Well, can you point your dad out to us?" And he was saying it in a sarcastic way, not really wanting the child to point her father out, but just trying to make lighthearted of it, because again, this is what kids do. Oftentimes they just they just say things that are really blunt and honest. And I looked at the little girl, and she just pointed right to her dad, and my heart just sank, because she didn't realize his joke, that he didn't really want her, to point out her father. And I just felt so bad, so bad for this father who, here he was at the family Mass and had the whole church kind of looking at him like he just got out of jail. And there's this part of me that just really wanted to do something for the fella, but I was sitting way in the front and he was sitting in the back. And of course, we can't save someone when they experience public humiliation like this. And I started to become, just a little frustrated, because I really wanted to reach out and lend a hand to this fella, but I couldn't. So I worked with letting it go, but it just kept sticking with me. I thought, why is this sticking with me so much? I thought, boy, the priest just really said the wrong thing. He really dropped the ball here. It was like a really bad joke. And he wasn't meaning it to come off that way at all. He was trying to make light of the fact that kids just, sometimes they just out you, if you've lost your temper with them or whatever it is. And I sat with it a little bit longer, and I realized, wow, how often have I said the wrong thing in a teaching environment? How often have I really dropped the ball? How often have I mishandled someone, or just said a little joke? And I have a sense of humor that is very dry. And my wife tells me all the time I get in trouble because I tell jokes and people don't know I'm joking. And I just realized, boy, I probably need, to say an apology to everyone, to everyone who I've hurt. And if I haven't hurt you, if you stick around long enough, my human self will probably hurt your feelings at one point. And so I will apologize in advance, truly. And I felt bad for the priest. I felt bad for the man who was experiencing some public humiliation. And I just realized that, so often here on planet Earth, We just say the wrong thing. We put our foot in our mouths and we drop the ball one way or another. Oftentimes we're just misunderstood. Sometimes people will come to me with great, great suffering. And sometimes I'll literally tear up because I'll experience their sadness for them. Other times I will laugh out loud. And some people have mistaken and thought I was laughing at them, but more often than not, I'm laughing because I've had this experience of just great pain, great suffering. We come to this planet, we get our butts kicked. Sometimes our brothers die, our sisters die. Sometimes our parents are taken away. Sometimes we're slapped in the face with something like cancer or a broken leg or just a loss of job or whatever it is. And I've always realized inside that, like even as I'm doing right now, is I'm either going to laugh at just the tragedy of life. It's like the utter predicament of what we've been put in here on planet Earth. Like life on planet Earth is not easy in any way. It can be so difficult. It can be so divine as well. But this is this great paradox of life can be so, so hard. And there's been times I fall on my knees and I just laugh at God. I laugh at what just happened, I just laugh at, my own ignorance, my own foolishness. I laugh at, just all of our foolishness because we all have the same mind. Truly. We all make the same mistakes. Truly. It's like all of us, we do the same thing to greater or lesser degrees. And so anyways, I was just reflecting and I thought, boy, I should apologize and just put it out there. With Google, when you have a business, and of course I work as a teacher, but also as a counselor, and my little hometown, if you do a Google search for a counselor, my name will pop up, and you'll see that I might have five-star reviews, and then I have maybe 2 1-star reviews of just people who are just utterly upset, or I dropped the ball, or they misunderstood. They misunderstood me, or I misunderstood them, and so they got this opportunity to write something silly about me, or mean, or angry. They got to write their review, and all of us on planet Earth, we have these sensitive human hearts, sensitive egoic structures, and it's easy to get your feelings hurt. It truly is. It truly is easy. But one of the beautiful things that someone wrote to me today, this is from Denny up in Alaska. Let me see if I can pull it up, what he wrote. He said, Craig, the first time we talked, you told me there's a part of me that was never harmed. I get that now. Nothing was ever harmed. Just an identity that mistakenly thought I was. And this is a beautiful realization when we mature on the path and we come to this place where we realize deep within us is a place which is indestructible. Deep within us is a place free from pain, from heartache, from sadness, free from being harmed. If any of you have been to middle school, which I assume that's all of us here, middle school is a tough environment. High school is a tough environment. Hell, sometimes just elementary school recess is a tough environment. I know I got knocked over a couple times, had my face put in the dirt, and it's easy to be really hurt in a psychological way. And to think that this is the totality of your being, that this one experience, like the fella today who, whose little girl told the whole the whole church, my daddy was in jail for a long, long time. I'm sure that really hurt his ego. But I know there's a presence within him, that outlived the experience of jail, that outlived the experience of being humiliated. I know there's something within him which is pure, which is divine, which is unharmed by life, unharmed. In order to discover this place, it's not just about just sitting silently in meditation. It's truly about embracing all the places within us which have been beaten, which have been abused, which have been hurt, that have experienced, incredible heartache, like the death of our brother, the death of our brother or sister, whoever it is, that there's something here that's unshakable. And it's through acknowledging our human pain, it's through acknowledging our human heart and giving ourselves full permission to grieve, to let go, that we actually begin to experience this indestructible presence, this indestructible presence. Many people think it's just through sitting silently in meditation that we will discover our indestructible presence. And in one way, we oftentimes come in contact with our indestructible presence through meditation, through retreat time, through spending time in silence. But unless we open our hearts to all the pain we've ever experienced and look deeper than the pain, look at that light within us which has been unharmed, that light within us which is courageous enough to embrace all of life in every direction, everything within us, everything around us, through in and throughout. Then we discover this indestructible nature. And so, it's nice to be here with you all. Let me see here. I just have a couple announcements. I always forget to say these in the beginning. I have a retreat coming up February 6th through the 9th in San Diego. There's about 5 or 6 places left. So if you're still interested in coming, please let me know soon or sign up, on the website. Also, a big thank you for those of you who've been supporting me, supporting the Sangha, supporting these broadcasts with your donations. Thank you, truly. Truly. If you'd like to make a donation, you can do that at just my website, which is my name, just.com. And so I think those are the the announcements. Oh yeah, one more is we have this Wednesday night meditation group, which is so wonderful. So if you'd like to join us, please do so. Please do so. It's really nice to spend some time with everyone. Okay, so here's a question from Ivy. Ivy lives in Los Angeles. She lives right next to Brad Pitt, the movie star. She's always excited that she's going to see him just pop out of his house one day. This is what Ivy writes. Craig, can you expound upon intuition and listening to your heart? Expound. Wow. That sounds like I can give my spiritual discourse now. Craig, can you expound upon intuition and listening to your heart? We've discussed this many times, but I would like to hear more about the absolute silence I'm going through now as to the next steps? Yeah, that's a beautiful question. So I like what you wrote, Ivy. I like what you said about this absolute silence. When you step into silence, you can truly begin to hear the voice of the heart. You can truly begin to hear. And so intuition is literally the voice of God, the intelligence of God, arising in you, as you. In you, as you. All great truth, all great intelligence comes from within. And it's difficult to hear the voice of the heart if our mind is busy, if we're fighting with someone from the past, if we're not comfortable with sitting in silence. You know, so many people, they're not comfortable with silence. They're just not comfortable with it. You know, they start squirming all over the place. Their mind, you know, brings forward the to-do list or whatever it is. And so, Ivy, I'm going to invite you just to listen to the quietest voice within you. And just notice how it comes forward with this power. It's like a quiet truth. A quiet truth. Let it guide you. Let it lead you. There's so many times throughout the day when I hear this voice and I just act according. You know, there's no argument. And so when I do this, I'm living in alignment with the truth. If I have a contrary thought, which I've learned pretty good by now, not to listen to any contrary thoughts. But when you listen to the contrary thoughts, you'll discover it normally doesn't work out as good. And so a big thing we have to be willing to do is to trust in the voice of God, to trust in this presence, which is arising within you. Can you trust? In the beginning, it can be a little bit fun, you know. I'm not telling you to test God, but, you know, just ask, you know. Sometimes I used to ask questions like yes or no. Should I go this way or that way? And if you hear nothing, that means we just sit still. Or we keep doing what we were doing. We don't change anything. And so this is something that we must master through listening to the voice. And you'll notice for some people, especially if they have a very busy mind, their egoic nature may try to co-opt the voice of intuition, the voice of God. And it will come up with all kinds of beautiful theories, you know, grand ideas. And oftentimes, you know, this is just the spiritual superego trying to take charge of the process. And you'll normally know when you're getting carried away. The truth is always simple. It's always basic. If it comes with a long argument, that's your thinking mind, because truth doesn't need to be defended. Intelligence doesn't need to be defended. It'll just come as this flow. It's like the wind just blowing through you. For some people, it'll be words. With other people, you'll just feel this movement within you to go in this direction. Sometimes it's interesting. I even feel like something unconscious or confusing is moving me. But then I'll bump into the wall, and then I'll look and I'll see, oh, there's that, there's the thing I was looking for that I couldn't find. I couldn't find. So even in unconscious moments, God can use you. I found this very many times where, I would start to look for something, I couldn't find it, and then my little girl, would call me, and I would just, go walk in her direction. And on my way to, go help her tie her shoe or something, I'd bend down, I'd go to sneeze, something silly, and I'd look to my right, and I'd say, oh, there's that screwdriver I was looking for, or whatever it is, whatever it was. And so more and more, as you're willing to live in the silence, what you'll find is life will move you. Life will lead you, life will guide you. But you have to be humble. You have to be humble. And you have to be willing to surrender your grand ideas, or your busy ideas, or your to-do list, or whatever it is that clogs your consciousness. And Ivy, I know that you're already doing this. And so this will be an even deeper step forward, is just listening to the silence. Another fun game to play is to listen to the silence and to not speak until the silence tells you to speak. To not speak until the silence tells you to speak. This takes great courage. Great courage. We begin to see that so much we fill the air with is just idle chatter. One of my prayers in the morning is, God, Lord, will you speak through me? Will you act through me? Will you live through me? And what you'll find more and more is your mind becomes quite empty, quite free. And then you're moved. You're moved in one direction or the other. But not moved by ego, not moved by your unconsciousness. You're moved by something greater. And the beautiful thing is, it doesn't even have to feel that lofty. You can just feel really silent. And as if you're just being moved. Just like a kite or a sailboat. Just out at sea. Going where the wind takes you. But the wind isn't the unconscious wind or the wind of the ego. It's the wind of grace. It's so beautiful, Ivy. You play with this. You play with this. Which I know you are. Okay. Let me see if there's any questions. All right. Let's see. Hey, Craig, I have a question for you when you see this. Richard. Yeah, Richard, what's your question, my friend?
Hey, Craig. So my question has to do with the descent of grace of the Divine Mother and the ascending grace of the awakening earth plane. I've heard you talk about that in the context of your teacher David, and then I think Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. I'm honestly just curious about where that practice comes from, because I use it a lot, but I don't really know anything about it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Something totally different than the last one. And so Sri Aurobindo, for those of you who don't know, and the Mother, there were two teachers who lived in South India in the last century. Aurobindo was a great sage, and then he had a student who woke up under his guidance, and then they just started teaching together. And The mother, her real name is Mira Alfonsa, and she's from France. They were some of the first pioneers who spoke about evolutionary enlightenment. They spoke about these two different aspects of God. One aspect of God is what has been spoken about for thousands and thousands of years. God is the absolute. As the absolute. This is basically the realization of the Buddha. Waking up to vast, spacious emptiness where everything is perfect. But you can wake up to this truth and it cannot touch, say, your humanity and your egoic nature. Now let me clarify that a little bit, because that's kind of, just too harsh of a generalization. When you wake up to silence as your nature, you may realize who and what you are. You may live in a state of freedom like the Buddha did. But for some of us, it doesn't penetrate our ego. It doesn't penetrate our thinking mind. It doesn't penetrate our physical form. And so Aurobindo and the mother, they realized this. They realized that people on the path were having incredible spiritual awakenings. And yet, they still had big fat egos. And if anyone has any question about this, you can just, Google, spiritual teacher scandal, and you'll see all kinds of great stories of, incredible teachers who had incredible realizations. And that realization didn't fully penetrate their humanity. It may have penetrated some aspect of it, but it didn't penetrate the totality of them. And so Aurobindo, he was trained at Oxford, even though he was from India. He was an incredible revolutionary, incredible sage. Just a brilliant mind, probably one of the most brilliant minds that has lived on planet Earth. And Ken Wilber, who's alive today, he's based much of his teachings on that of Aurobindo's work. And so Aurobindo, when he was young and he stepped on the path, very quickly he met a sage. He went to visit the sage. And upon contact with the sage, right away, just like that, his mind became silent. And I'm sure he thought, wow, there's something incredible here. But the big thing he noticed is it didn't touch every aspect of his being. And also he realized that his country, which was India, Mother India, was in great pain, great suffering, tremendous poverty. And so he wanted to bring forth a revolution in consciousness, not just consciousness like up here, which is etheric and spacious, empty. But he wanted to invite the consciousness of God, the mind of God, to come into his body, like I was saying a moment ago, to speak through him, to act through him, to be through him, to come into the very fabric of his cells, to transform the physicality of the planet. One of the things that Aurobindo said, if you've been to India, there are thousands of awakened masters, gurus, sadhus. It's an incredible country. The top realizers in the world, tend to come out of India, stay in India, live in India. But the country is just in shambles, just utter poverty, pollution, corruption, both in monasteries, around monasteries, in ashrams, around ashrams. There's just tremendous pain there, and Aurobindo wanted to create this change. He wanted to invite a change. And what he realized is his cells were waking up and calling on God, saying, wake up in me, as me. So that these cells, can actually touch the fabric of the entirety of the planet, so that true change can happen, true change. And so he saw the value of evolution. True evolution, doesn't just take place in the minds of many. And again, he went to Oxford, and so he saw that, many great ideas come out of Oxford, many great political theories and this and that, like Oxford and Harvard and Stanford and this and that. But he saw we had so many theories and ideas and revolutions, but nothing has changed this planet. And he lived during World War I and World War II, and still in 2020, I guess it's almost 2020, we're still, ready to kill each other, shoot each other. Men are still, violently abusing women. He said, I want to see a change to this. And he wanted to invite a cultural change that happened on the level of divinity. And so in the past, the idea is, I want to wake up for my own freedom, for my sake. And he used to get in, like little debates with Ramana Maharshi. And of course, Ramana's realization was incredible. But the two of them would, I've heard they wrote letters back and forth because both of them lived in silence. And so for most of their lives. But the difference in the realization of me waking up for the sake of my own freedom and inviting the collective consciousness of the species to wake up. And so this is what Aurobindo was working on, for literally to be an upgrade in humankind, an upgrade that would spread out throughout the entirety of the planet. Again, not a philosophical one, not a religious one. We've had those before. Jesus brought an incredible revolution. And if you look, people still kill in his name, which is crazy. Muhammad brought an incredible revolution. People still kill in his name. And what Aurobindo was wanting was the change, was the enlightenment to happen on the level of the body. So instead of saying, I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm not these emotions, to say, yes, I am the mind, I am the emotions, I am the body. And I'm inviting a greater mind, a divine mind to wake up in me that is connected to divine intelligence. I'm inviting what he called the divine vital, the emotional nature, to wake up so that it is a radically sensitive heart, which can feel, experience love in a huge way, in a vibrant way, in a vibrant way. To change the nature of the fight or flight response literally in the DNA in the individual. And so what Aurobindo brought forward, again, I hope this doesn't sound too science fiction, but basically he was looking for the next evolutionary leap. And he realized that God, the Absolute, is literally in the consciousness of the mind, in the consciousness of the emotional nature, in the consciousness of the body, in the consciousness of the species, in the consciousness of everything, even rocks and water and the planet itself. And so there's been a couple of saints in South India who, again, I hope this isn't too far out for people, who've experienced what a lot of Buddhists call the rainbow body, where they've individually transformed their body to light, literally. And you can believe that or not. I'm not looking to debate anything. And what Aurobindo was wanting is for the whole planet to be transformed into light. A deathless body, a deathless being. And of course, there is a deathless being that goes from lifetime to lifetime. But he wanted the physicality to wake up. Because if you ever sit long enough, when you sit in meditation, you'll notice the fight or flight response is literally in the cells. It's literally in your cells. It's in your thinking mind, it's in your emotional mind, and it's in your cells. If we don't transform the fight or flight response into, say, the intelligence response, the love response, the truth response, we're still going to be killing each other in 100 years. Men are still going to be taking advantage of women. There's not going to be any true change unless the fabric of the body changes. This will always be a hell world. And what he was inviting was that this planet could become a heaven realm, a divine realm, a divine realm. The species could become a divine species, a divine being. And he honored the path of evolution. He honored the path of the absolute. He woke up to that. That was the first thing he did. He very quickly woke up to the absolute. So this isn't contrary to the absolute. It's the next step beyond the absolute. When you wake up to the absolute, you can simply turn all of your attention inward and just contemplate your navel, your own divinity, your radiance, your glory. That's one way. Is the Buddhist path of nirvana. I don't want to come back for another lifetime. Like that's the basic teaching of the Buddha. I don't believe it's that simple, but that's, let's say, the basics of we want to free ourselves from this lifetime and never come back. This teaching is I want to wake up in life itself so that life doesn't have to suffer. Humanity doesn't have to suffer. The 10 billion species that we are, exterminating on a daily basis, won't have to suffer. And so it's a radical transformation. And one of the ways you can open to this, just to make it very experiential, is if you just open your crown chakra and invite this greater consciousness to flow down into you. It requires humility, not a philosophy. And this is one of the great things Aurobindo taught us. He said, please do not follow my teachings in a philosophical way. Just open your heart, open your mind, open your body to grace. And let the higher intelligence of the universe come into you and lead you forward. And this is how I was trained, with my teacher David. I would go to him with all kinds of spiritual ideas that I'd read about in the book, and I'd say, what about this? What about that? And basically he told me, why don't you open your heart, open your experience, and let God show you your next step. Let life guide your spiritual path. Let the intelligence of the universe guide your spiritual path. And so it's a different orientation. So it's not just about like, I want to wake up so I can be free of suffering. Again, that's a valid thing, but that sure does sound like ego. I want to wake up so I can be free. This is a much different type of surrender. I give myself to you, Lord, to the intelligence of the universe, the intelligence of life. You show me the way. You come into me. You wake up how you want to wake up. And you begin to feel your mind becoming silent. But the other thing you feel is when God shows up in this way, you feel this evolutionary pressure. It's like heat, brilliant light will come into you and start to burn up not only your karma, but the karma of the species. So often in my days, I feel like I'm just this transformative vehicle, that this thing here is a transformative vehicle. Whether it's my pain or someone else's, it doesn't matter. It's being burnt. It's being cooked out of. out of me, and something greater is coming. And so again, it's just a matter of surrender. Do you surrender and trust the intelligence of the universe? Or are you going to follow your own way? Which, there's a good chance is based on ego, based in selfishness. At best, really good intentions. And so that's the descent coming down from above. The ascent of energy, because Brahma is everywhere. Brahman is everywhere. Brahman is everything. Atman is everything. God, the fullness of God, is actually in your cells, is in the planet, is in the earth, is in everything. And so there's this descent of grace where you can invite this higher intelligence to come down into you. And it will, if you're humble. If you stick around to this path, you'll feel it, like you're saying, Richard. But then the earth itself starts to wake up and says, I like this, I want this. And it starts waking up to its own divinity. And again, this feels, one feels, really heavenly and light, but also will come with this great pressure and intensity. And then the other one will come with like this grounded light. The quality of it just feels different. But don't let me paint the picture for you. Open up and experientially just notice what comes forward when you surrender yourself. What comes forward when you surrender yourself? Sometimes when I talk about this, people get, a little freaked out. They think it's a little too strange. But this is where God and evolution come together, where you see God in the absolute, but then you look at human life and you see God is ever evolving as well. Now we are the evolving edge of God in the form of human beings. And human beings are one evolutionary step out of the animal being. And so we're all trying to figure out how to be a human being. And then Aurobindo asked, what is it like to be a divine being, literally a light being? What is that like? Can I embody this? He had a big sangha, a big ashram, and he was trying to get the collective to embody this, which is a huge task, of course. And to some degree, of course, it's already happening. Like my friend Rick Archer, he also says, Craig, I feel like we're having just a mass awakening, this collective awakening. So whether we like it or not, or believe in this, I don't want to say theory or philosophy or not, it's happening. It's happening. And just the question for you individually is, are you a person who wants to surrender to this movement? Or do you just want to go free yourself and go to a place called nirvana and, disappear into emptiness? And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want that to sound judgmental. That may be your path. And I've met many great teachers who that is their path. And then some rare teachers who are truly surrendering themselves, their life, even their own vision, their ideas, their path, and letting this greater path show them this greater truth. And so anyways, thank you. Thank you, Richard. Okay, so here is another question. Hi, Craig. Neil here. God is showing me in my body to leave my job. I'm finding it hard to trust the feeling, to really trust her leadership. Have you had experiences like this? Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If I walk into a building and God doesn't want me there, she'll tell me to leave. Normally I'll feel resistance, right away. Or, just this isn't, I'll get the feeling this isn't the right place for you. So have I left jobs before? Oh yeah, like God leads me throughout the day. I've left conversations before. where if someone says something to me and I'm just finding the conversation's not going anywhere, or this isn't a fruitful place for me, I'll feel the energy of just wanting to leave. With the career thing, one of the things that we have to remember on planet Earth is sometimes God asks us to leave a job, and that's the absolute truth. Time to be done with this job. Okay. But then we are faced with this cold reality of we live in an evolutionary world, a world which requires a transition time. A transition time. And a lot of people don't honor that. They just get stuck in the absolute and say, well, God told me to quit, and so therefore I should just be doing my dream job right away, and I should have 10 million clients and $10 million in the bank account. And it doesn't always work like that on planet Earth. I've been teaching for, I think, maybe 14 years, maybe 15 years. I can't remember. But the first 8 years or so, I really had to transition. I had to work 2 different jobs. 2 different jobs. And it was a really tough transition. It wasn't like that. People oftentimes cite Ramana Maharshi and Eckhart Tolle as 2 individuals who had a spiritual awakening, and then right away, they had an ashram and this and that. And those are both myths. Ramana spent 14 years, just sitting in silence, and eventually an ashram was built around him. Eckhart Tolle spent a couple years just integrating his experience and sitting on park benches and this and that. And it's very rare that just because we leave something fully comes into place. And so if God's telling you to leave the job, Neil, I encourage you to look at transitioning. So say with your job, you just take it down to having less and less hours at that place, and then when you can be done, you walk away. If that means you have a second job first, you get the second job first. If you have a giant trust fund in the bank and you can just do whatever you want, then yeah, quit and leave, be done. But most of us here on planet Earth, we don't have the trust fund where we can just quit right away. So listen to your heart, follow the truth. But don't expect it to be easy, because oftentimes God gives us very, very difficult tasks to do. Like I said, I knew since I was young, I knew I was going to be a priest. That was just the vision I got in my head. As I grew up, it was okay, I'm going to be a spiritual teacher. I wanted to teach probably when I was 22 years old. I spent another 20 years. Yeah, I spent 20 years with my teacher. Before maybe I spent 10 years with him before he's like, hey, I want you to start sharing. To some degree. He didn't say go out and become a guru and amass followers or anything silly like that, and I wouldn't have done it. I just knew I wanted to teach meditation. I wanted to speak about peace. I wanted to share, with a big open heart. With a big open heart. I want to share from a place of vulnerability. And so I started to share, and then he continued to train me, more and more. And then eventually, then I was eventually ready to teach at a different level, a different capacity. And so anyways, we want to listen to the truth, Neil. We want to listen to the truth. And it can be scary. It can be frightening. When I heard the voice that said teach, say when I was 20, basically it just meant get some training. sit with your teacher for 20 years. That's what it meant. That's what it meant. And it was a good thing. And he trained me well. He trained me well. He spent so much time with me, like a ridiculous amount of time. Incredible patience. Incredible patience he had for me. And so I encourage you to have that same patience for yourself and to have patience with the transition. With the transition. One of the hardest things for me was just transition periods where I knew there was this bright light in me. You know, like, Neil, you should be doing something different. But then we're in this world where you're not fully seen, you're not fully acknowledged, you're not fully received. You're not fully received. One of the things that happened when I started teaching is no one knew what I was speaking about because I wasn't using their language, and so I wasn't received well. You know, I live in a very strong Buddhist community, and I started to teach about Sri Aurobindo. People had no idea what I was speaking about. It made no sense. Buddhists argued with me again and again and again. And I love the teachings of the Buddha. I love Christ, and Christians argue with me again and again and again. I say, well, I'm teaching about the true teachings of Christ. So we're not always received well. We're not always received well. So it takes time. And this is what life is inviting for us. Back to that thing I was speaking about in the beginning, about our indestructible presence. Our presence, we realize the indestructibility of it through being humiliated, through falling on our face, through making mistakes, through failing at what we do. And this is one of the silly things that happens in this world is God will give you this grand vision of your work here on planet Earth. And then God gives us, it's like God says, go dig a big hole. And then she gives us a broken shovel to dig that hole with. And by that, I mean our minds are not clear. Our emotional natures are a mess, And so everything, like everything flows through, a chaotic mind, an emotional nature that's a mess. And so sometimes, it comes off as less than pure, like the purity of your vision that you're inviting forward. God has given me incredible visions. But then this body, this mind, which isn't always clear, which makes mistakes, which says the wrong thing, which, I'm dyslexic, which is a real fun one. I wasn't dyslexic my whole life until after awakening. Then I became incredibly dyslexic. Sometimes my mind goes blank and it just doesn't work. And so we're given this vehicle that's less than perfect. That's a good thing because it keeps us humble. It keeps us humble, but we know, okay, I'm going to butcher this. Whatever I do, I'm going to do my best to do a good job, but I'm probably going to butcher it. And so anyways, let's see here. If I missed any questions from anyone. I think there was one more. Let me see if I can find it here. Thank you all for your patience with me. Here's a question from Monica. She writes, Craig, I'm experiencing severe anxiety, depression, and panic attacks. Severe vibrations in my body. Is this clearing out the bad stuff in me? That's a great question, Monica. Thank you for writing this. Yes, everything is being cleared out, Monica. It's being cleared out. And so when you feel lots of anxiety and depression and panic attacks, if you want to break the cycle of it, so it is actually emptying out of you, you cannot believe the thoughts that come with the anxiety, that come with the depression. If we're depressed, oftentimes the thought may be, I will never heal. I'll be here forever. I'm stuck. If you have anxiety, it's, I can't handle this. I'm completely overwhelmed. But if you just let your body breathe and feel and let go, the feelings of anxiety will empty out of you. They'll empty out of you. I've had many panic attacks where I just laid on the ground, drooling, mucus pouring out of my nose, tears, And I just felt like I was in this river, a river of anxiety. But as I opened to the river of anxiety, let my body shake and tremble and just fully surrender to the trembling, I would just start to just laugh out loud, because I realized that this river of anxiety was really a river of light. The light was burning up the confusion, the pain, the sadness, the heartache, the depression. The light was burning it up. And so if you let go fully and deeply, yes, these severe vibrations are clearing out the bad stuff. I don't really think of anything as bad. I just think of it in evolutionary terms. Sometimes energy is stuck. Sometimes it's animal energy. Sometimes it's emotional energy. Your job is to let energy flow. If you let energy flow, it will clear out and you will feel lighter. If you're slowing the process through believing your thoughts and not surrendering, a lot of times we become like, I always say this gruesome metaphor, but it gets to the point. We're like the puppy who eats something rotten, vomits it up, and then eats the vomit again, which is sick. Then you get, the belly doesn't heal, if you eat your own vomit. And so you want to let it empty out of you. And to truly release it, you have to trust. You have to surrender. You have to melt. You have to know, Monica, that what you are is a divine being, not an anxious or depressed being. And this is the truth for all of us. We are all divine beings, holy beings. We are not anxious beings. We're not depressed beings. We're not animal beings. We are divine beings. And so nice to be here with you all. It's been my absolute pleasure. Again, if you want to make a donation, you can do so at my website, craigholliday.com. It greatly supports the programming and the technology. And like I spoke about last week or the week before, I had to buy some new computers and stuff because things were crashing. You know how it is. Anything with technology has a shelf life and an end. So thank you all for supporting the cause, and you're supporting not just me, but spreading these teachings out to so many others. And so your generosity is actually touching many of your brothers and sisters. So I'll say thank you from me and thank you from them, truly. And if you want to join on the retreat, please sign up soon. Again, details are at my website. May peace be with you all. I love you all so much, truly, truly. Good night.